everybody. How is you today? I is fine. Long week. Sorry about not posting on Monday. Boundless technical issues. For some reason, my editing program just wouldn't edit and kept kicking me out of the program. And then I finally got it completed. And then I watched the completed video and it's all pixelated. And so I'm working on that. It'll probably just be 2 posted this week instead of 1 posted. 2, anyway, you get what I'm saying. There's going to be 2 instead of 1. So anyway, I hope you're doing well. It's fall time. I'm feeling very fall. Fall and spring are my favorite weather-wise, and summer is my favorite vibe-wise, but winter can suck it. No offense to people who like winter, but not me. Not one of those people. Anyway, so today, right now, this is a topic that I have experience with, for really real experience with. It is something that I think freaks people out. Some people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. So if you're one of those people that's not a huge fan, then, maybe skip this one. But for those of you who are curious about this subject, for those of you that may be dealing with the possibility of being this way yourself, you and your family, anyone who wants to hear my actual story that they've gotten Cliff's Notes on, and this is a little bit more of a fleshing out, then stick around. And, like I said, a little bit of a trigger warning. There are some things that we'll talk about that can be triggering. So, anywho. So today we're going to talk about homelessness. I've mentioned in a few other videos that I've been homeless before. About 2015 is when we really were living in our car. It was for 4 years collectively, from the start to finish. It was interwoven with stays in a motel, staying with like family or friends or whatever, alternate living arrangements. But the bulk of us not having a permanent residence was in our car. It was me and my 3 daughters, and it was a choice, for sure. It is a choice to be on the street. I will get to the rest of that because I know a lot of people take offense to that statement, but hear me out. I was rebelling against not only the system of astronomical rents and really stringent qualifications to rent a decent place. I was also rebelling against the idea that a single mom has no business being in the city proper, that they all need to be shuttled out to the outskirts and kept quiet and kept a dirty little secret somewhere. This is all developed over the last, I'd say, probably decade and a half, especially in California. Everyone wants to live here, the beautiful weather, the whatever it is. Especially where I'm at, it went from kind of the little local secret of this lovely little town that's actually a big city to being just everybody and their dog living here. And so that causes, of course, a cost of living to go up and rent to go up. It is a national rent crisis, meaning people are paying 70% of their income on just rent alone. And that was a statistic from, like I said, a few years ago. So I'm sure it's gone up. You can research that yourself, but that's a lot. That's a lot. And for someone who has a family of 4, or, when I was with my now co-parent, that's a family of 5, and we got a cat, so it's it gets really, really suffocating to try and keep up with rent, living expenses, food, keep all of that on the table. As they say, you're 1 paycheck away. If you're a family and you don't have multi-income, if you don't have, whatever, you're 1 paycheck away from being on the street. I broke up with, as I mentioned, my now co-parent. He decided to go, out of state somewhere, do his own thing, and, we stayed in California. The mission was for all of us to have a decent next step to a situation that was unhealthy and not fixable, not workable any longer. Something modest, but something that, there's 4 of us. Something that's workable, something that won't end up just being stressful for us the entire time because we're in a shoebox. If we were in a shoebox, that would be okay too. I can find happiness in a myriad of circumstances. So just looking for something that worked for us. After we were in a motel situation for about 4 months, that was around about $900 to $1,500 a week, depending on the rates. They went up around holidays. On the weekend, they'd be a higher rate for all the people who came down or, flew in or whatever. That's that's a lot. That's a lot to keep up with on a daily cycle. After about 4 months of that, like I said, it just wasn't workable anymore, for various reasons. Then that's when we decided to go to our first shelter. We stayed at a women and children shelter, which means that there's no men allowed on the premises. We stayed for 1 month, which is the allotted time that you're allowed to stay. You can stay for 1 month and then leave for, I think it's 3 months, and then come back for another month or something like that. Maybe it's 3 weeks. I don't know. We just stayed the 1 month and then we were good. We were woken up at 5 a.m., had to leave by 6 a.m. We were allowed to come back at 6 p.m. Never ever before 6 p.m. sharp. They provided you meals. When you feed mass amounts of people, you can't put seasoning, you can't put anything in there because of allergies and stuff like that. So it was always really, just not very appetizing. The women themselves that were running the shelter had stayed there at some point and gone through a program, which is called going upstairs, is what they referred to it as. And if you go upstairs, there's actual apartments that you can stay in, but you have to go through a religious program that they provide and some type of training, I believe. And then you can apply to work downstairs in the shelter. But you did have to be the religion that they designated. You couldn't just be like, oh, can I be spiritual and still do the program? No, you have to do exactly what they design, or you don't qualify. So if you couldn't tell just from the daily goings on, that was a very, very challenging situation to be in. Although I am always grateful for people who help other people in times of need, or just in general, or just like generally helpful people. That's what they show to the outside, to the investors, to the, whomever is giving them money to further their nonprofit. What they show to the people who are actually staying there is we get treated like cattle, basically, or at least we did when I was there. We were told, shut up and go to sleep when you're supposed to. You got in trouble and potentially kicked out if you didn't abide by the rules. We were told on numerous occasions that we should be thankful for what they're giving us. We should just shut up and take it. Just, shut your mouth and don't get yourself into trouble and like all this stuff. So basically they were saying either conform to the way that we want you to be or leave. And for some people that, didn't even have a car to be in, that's a scary proposition. So a lot of people end up just putting up with it or being very, very sneaky and very behind the scenes with all their goings on because they don't want to get kicked out, but they don't really want to play by the rules either. So that creates a lot of tension for people who are trying to abide by the rules and just keep their chin up and take it one day at a time. It's super counterproductive to be negative and kind of backbiting and to treat someone who's in a very vulnerable position like a little kid. Kind of devalue their feelings about things. That to me is very counterproductive. That's not going to help anybody get out of any kind of negative situation. Not to mention there were people detoxing from drugs or alcohol, and we're all sleeping in one room, no ventilation in the basement, one bathroom with showers included. We all had to take turns, and wait for everything. Like everything was a waiting game. And then there was a lice outbreak. We missed that bout of lice, but everyone got sick. Everyone, so we're all just crammed into this tiny space with people detoxing, with people going through whatever they're going through. I don't judge people. I would never say, oh, they're not allowed to stay here because of what they're going through in any way, but it is hard to try and have a good night's sleep when someone's gonna get up in 5 minutes and go puke their guts out or is audibly shaking on their bed, that kind of thing. So that kind of stuff is just really it's hard to stay positive in an environment like that. So after that month-long stint, we went to the safe lot. At that time in the state of California, you couldn't park on the street. It wasn't legal to just park on the street and sleep in your car for safety reasons. And I think just the residents of maybe just weren't keen on that, which fair enough. A lot of people are very disrespectful in that kind of situation. Anyway, so we go to the safe lot. Again, you show up there at 6 p.m. You leave at 6 a.m. sharp. It was a church parking lot. So there's one bathroom and up to 20 cars with multiple people in each car. That's kind of tough. Kind of a breeding ground for if anyone's sick or everyone else gets sick, kind of a thing. But I will say that was a more positive experience. We had a short stint at the safe lot the first time and ended up getting into what's called a rotational shelter, which means you spend 2 weeks at one church, then you go to another church, and you go to another church. And I think it was about like 3 months worth of rotations. So we jumped into, I think, the second or third rotation. The perks of that one that they tote are that they provide meals, but like it's like you can make your own lunch for the day. You have your own sleeping quarters generally. It's not just in one big heap with other people. They give you personalized attention. It's not, you're not cattle basically. And around that time, our car broke down. We were on foot, just kind of walking around the city, walking around places that were close enough, and then taking the bus, which is totally fine. Like that, there's nothing wrong with that. We actually had a lot of fun doing that. But going from the ease of a car to the not ease, on top of being like really worn out and tired and in a vulnerable place, it was a lot, not undoable. And there were some lovely, kind people within the rotational shelter, but probably about a handful, and we saw probably like 8 handfuls of people. It's all on a volunteer basis because it's a church program, so you get all different kinds of people that really genuinely want to help, that really are like spiritual, wonderful people. And then you get the people that are trying to put a feather in their cap, that get off on making lesser people feel less. And we saw both sides of that. The main theme with all of those rotational shelters was you should be beholden to us for what we are giving you. We had to take a money course at one of the shelters, as if we didn't know how to make $20 stretch, or we didn't know how to save money or whatever, which was kind of insulting because any single parent, person on a fixed income, like anybody, you know how to trim the fat and to make money last. Whatever, they felt like they had to throw that in there because obviously that's the idea, is that anybody that's in that situation just doesn't know how to handle life. At one of the shelters in particular, it was kind of like this weird twilight zone where there was all these rich people, and they sat in this big cluster in the middle of the room. The rest of the homeless people were around them in a bigger circle around the outside. They weren't dealing with us, talking to us, communicating with us. It was their circle and then us on the fringe. They were just like congratulating each other for being so wonderful and doing God's work and helping people. And one of the friends I had made, we just kind of looked over at each other and caught each other's eye, and we're just like, the fuck is this? Like is this the Hunger Games? Like what? Like it just was so foreign to me to treat people that you're supposed to be helping. You're doing God's work. Like God wasn't an elitist asshole, and to my recollection, but maybe to them he is. I don't know. So that was tough to take. At that same shelter, the person running the shelter yelled at me for asking if I could get a pacifier for my daughter so that she could sleep through the night. Like raised his voice. People were looking, like turning and looking like, oh my God, what's going on? Like that was the most severe, I would say. Everything else was very passive aggressive and very subtle. But it was rife. It was just all throughout the experience. And I was berated on several occasions just for pointing this stuff out, saying, hey, like, can you explain to me why that is? Because, it would make more sense to do this for us. Or here someone, gave me $20 a day. Can we get something besides soup to eat? And I was always shut down and told to like, just shut up, basically. Kind of counterproductive. And the opposite of what Jesus did. And Jesus is the number one MVP, according to a lot of religious people. It's very odd, very interesting. So then after that rotational shelter, we went back to the Safe Lot, and that's where we stayed for the bulk of it. During that time, I did interviews for Telemundo, NPR, the local ABC affiliate, National Geographic. So this is the article. That's me. You can see my hair hasn't changed that much. That's funny. I'm covering up the pictures of my daughter and my co-parents, protective privacy, but that's the picture of us sitting there, and it was an article about the working homeless. So they were doing a story based on like, why is it that people that can afford to pay rent are living in their car? The reason why I got all those interviews is because I was willing to share my story, not unlike now, benefit anybody, to kind of change the stigma about being homeless or whatever. And so that was really cool. It was very vulnerable, kind of raw at times, to share and to invite people into something that was still a developing situation, but I was glad to do it. So they just kind of threw all the interviews at me. I'll link down below the NPR interview. There was 2. It was a 2-part. And then we bounced around. Like I said, we stayed with family. We had stayed with, there was just some various like kind of temporary, have to move every few days kind of living arrangements, but it was nice to not have to sleep in the car and to be able to cook in a kitchen, that kind of thing. It took me about 2 years before I really got my shit together as far as not feeling like a piece of crap because of the situation that I was in. That first year was tough. That first year was me being at complete and utter odds with myself and feeling like a failure and feeling like, you know, the system is all effed up and what am I going to do? The second year was me kind of wallowing. And then, you know, the first part and then the second part of the year, I was like, you know what? I can do this. I know I can do this. So I rallied and I started, you know, getting up and getting dressed for the day instead of just wearing PJs all day. And I made the choice to, if I was going to stay in this situation and, you know, be an activist in a sort of way or whatever, that I needed to just get my shit together. All the while that all of this stuff is going on, also on the kind of technical side that people don't realize about being homeless, you see several caseworkers, at least here in the area that I'm in. I saw probably about 20 caseworkers over the whole, you know, the whole thing. Some of them were one day. I just popped in, told them my story, popped back out. Some of them were reoccurring, but nothing moved. Nothing was moving, and there was no progress. When we first initially started, the wait list for affordable housing was 2 years. By about halfway through, it was 4 years. You take an assessment test, and it's to assess your sustainability on the street. Like, how long can you sustain yourself on the street? Certain time or whatever, I don't know the exact, you know, the way they break it down, but then they feel like they can help you find a place to live. I know, it's like a lottery or something. We were told that we were in the running, so that first initial assessment test that we took, we were supposed to have been put in the system so that we would be matched with it's called a housing navigator. The housing navigator is the person that can plug you into an affordable apartment or housing or whatever. If you don't have a housing navigator, you don't have anything, basically. If you want to find something that's affordable and you want to find something that'll work for you and your family, if you have more than, you know, 3 members of a family, you need to be in the system. You need to be on the wait lists. We were not. We were under the impression we were for the majority of the time we were in the car. Right around that time, I got really frustrated with the whole situation because here I was, pulling myself up by the bootstraps and then just kind of predicated on either religion or being just okay with being treated like shit all day. I realized that not everybody has that goal. Like, not everybody has the goal to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and get better and let the situation turn them into something better. A lot of people just get into that position and go, fuck it, what's the point? That's the person that those places are catering to. They're not catering to people that have their shit together or that are trying to get their shit together. They're catering to the people that really don't give a fuck. And so that's the hard part. The analogy that I used often was like, it's like being someone who loves to swim around a bunch of people who are drowning, if that makes sense. So it was like, I was just trying to have a wonderful experience and learn from it. They were just trying to kind of waste away. In those programs, in those facilities, are just kind of wasting away. So that's tough to be around after a while. So we chose not to. We chose to just kind of forego all of that, go a separate way. I enrolled in college, community college, and I was taking classes for filmmaking, which was really rad. I loved it. I loved learning. Having something else going on, it really was a good distraction for me. And also, just I was able to reclaim a part of myself that I had lost and didn't realize. I was able to connect with myself, just me, my Lola-ness. And that was really a big step for me. That was really important for me. My youngest was not school age yet. My middle kiddo had an awful kindergarten experience, so we switched to online public school. My co-parent was helping her with school while I would go to school, and then we'd switch, and he would go to work. Actually, as well, I had the college newspaper did a story about me. What started it was that I never got my financial aid. It was delayed like the entire semester, the entire time. I had no financial aid to do any of the stuff I did, but that's okay. You know, I found a way to do it anyway. It's funny because it says legend on the front. But yeah, you can see that was our rig. We got bed bugs, and so we had to have bags like that to keep potential contamination at bay. It looked like extra destitute, but like it's easier to get stuff if they're in a squishy, you know, rather than like a hard case or like a Tupperware case. And you can see how tired I looked in the eyes. Like, I was tired. I was very tired. There I am looking even extra beat down. Like, you gotta love media sensationalism. Look at that. I'm like, I even look like 10 pounds heavier because of my like the way I'm sitting. And then here I am on my way to yoga class. I took a yoga class. It was interesting that I was getting so much media attention that I never really intended on. I was like the poster girl for homelessness. It's kind of like a backhanded accomplishment, I guess. So I just distanced myself from the system and everything that was kind of like dragging me down. I stopped looking at the situation through other people's eyes, and I started looking at it and feeling it through my experiences being in it. As you can, research, there are tons of people that now either live in tiny houses or that are doing the exact same thing that we did, like voluntarily, like on purpose. It's a lot cheaper, it's a lot freer. So you kind of get outside that whole stranglehold that financially everybody is feeling strangled, unless you're a very small percent. Everybody's getting strangled these days, so, and I think that's why other people elect to do it. I started thinking of it that way. I started calling it urban camping. Instead of it being like, oh my God, this is some horrible situation I have to survive, it was like, this is actually a really enriching situation that I can use to my advantage. And once I kind of switched into that mindset, things started changing. Some of the other rough stuff, and then I'll get into the good stuff. I definitely had to defecate and urinate outside in the bushes several times, which whatever, like dogs were allowed to, so whatever. You do what you gotta do. Times when we had absolutely no money and nothing to eat really besides snacks that people love to give you snacks, and I'm like, snacks. You want some more snacks? You need a toothbrush? Because I get a toothbrush and I got snacks. Which, God love them, they're trying to help, but it's like that after a while, it's like, I don't need any more snacks. I don't need a toothbrush. I need like a bathroom to brush my teeth in, So that was some of the rough stuff. The good things. There are way more good things than there were negative things, believe it or not. I never had to ask for money. I mentioned a second ago that, there were days we didn't have money. On those days, I would just kind of level out and be like, it's okay. Everything works out. Things are always working out. I would focus on, playing with my kids. We'd go to a park or the library or, places, little events around town. Focus on being with them and being present. And then someone would just show up and give me $20 or, $100 or $200 or just some food or some clothes or whatever. But just human-wise, just from a human perspective, humans were very kind, especially ones that had been through it themselves. So I had an onslaught of people that really did just help. They saw that we needed help and they just helped. And their heart was in the right place, even though some of them had ended up being like, again, like a feather in the cap kind of a situation, but they still helped. I met some kind of not nice people, but I also met some amazing people. Some people with amazing stories that you would not believe. Back in the day, they were a roadie for this, musician or, and you would never know it to look at them. And they were resilient, rebellious, awesome people. And they were just trying to get by and trying to do the same thing that I was. So we commiserated. I met several people that I instantly clicked with, and we're still in contact today. We helped each other because the systems that are in place don't do that. They're not there to uplift, really. They're there to manage and to kind of control the situation. We uplifted each other, and it was really cool. Another plus is that I learned my city. I learned back roads. I learned alleys to get here from there. I learned each little enclave and each little, like mini little area around the city. I learned how to get there without freeways. I learned a lot about my city. And it's not just somewhere I live now, it's somewhere I choose to thrive. Just having that opportunity to really deep dive into your city and find all the good restaurants, find the best beaches, find the best parks. I suggest doing that whether you're homeless or not. Like, just deep dive your city and just see what's there. It's worth it because it's where you live, like have an active interest in where you live. Another perk is that I honed my spiritual practices. All of the things that I've been imparting to you guys with this channel, I was able to kind of zero in on. I had a chance to do that because every day I was confronted with, how do I manage all this energy? Because you never have four walls around you when you're on the street. So you don't have a chance to decompress or to kind of separate your energy from all the other energies. I learned how to shield my energy. Keep crystals with me on my person so that they can help my energy field. I learned how to do an energy healing of my own flavor of energy healing. So there's like Reiki and like all different, but mine is called Love Touch. I call it Love Touch. And so I learned how to do that, and I, practiced it a few times with great results. I improved the relationships with everybody around me, but mostly with myself. Everything that I had lost about myself when I was in servitude to other people and to other ideas, I had a chance to pull it back, to roll around in it and just feel really good in it. It's amazing. For the most part, it was a wonderful transformative experience for me and my family. There were some negatives from my daughters. I think my oldest had it the roughest, but if you are confronted with that type of change, chances are it's for a reason. It is for a reason. It's for a reason. I know that, and so I was able to pass that kind of idea along. So we talked about it a lot. We kept an open dialogue. There were some gnarly experiences that, all of us could have done without, but at the same time, that's true of any living situation. That's true of any environment that you're in. It was life affirming, and it was a challenge that we arose to. Did I see the gritty underbelly of humanity? Yeah, all the time. Did I see the complete opposite and the wonderful purity of the human spirit? All the time, every day. So those two things kind of mingled together. It helped put things in perspective. I remembered that, life is a journey. It's not a destination. Destinations are very one note. The change, the impact that you have on your own life is what it's all about. You being the navigator, that's what it's all about. Here's some food for thought. If you are confronted with the prospect of being homeless yourself, or as I like to call it, houseless, I know it's scary. It was scary for me. It's hard to look at things objectively when we're taught from a young age that if you don't have a house, you're to be pitied, basically. And I think it scares everybody because of the nomadic nature. We used to be nomads and move from place to place, and if we didn't have a place to stay for the night, we would die potentially. So I think that's just kind of hardwired in there. We're not there anymore. We're okay. And if you spend a night in your car and it just really messes you up, you really just want to go back to the beginning and just forget it, you have a kind of tougher journey. But if you stay the first night and you wake up and you're like, okay, it's not so bad. Like today I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Then it's going to be an easier transition and a shorter time that you will have to experience it. Check in with yourself daily. Check in with yourself and say, hey, okay, how am I feeling today? What do I need today? Listen to what you need. Follow what you need. If you don't vibe with a caseworker, a volunteer, someone that's in close proximity to you, find someone else. Only you that gives away your rights and your dignity at the end of the day. The more you judge others, the more you're judging yourself. Believe it or not, the more you dislike other people, the more you're disliking yourself. So chances are if someone is on the street, they have experienced some of the things that I mentioned before and chosen to go it alone. A lot of the mentally ill people or people with drug or alcohol problems didn't start off that way, or at least it was a very, very dialed back version of where they are now. The virtue of being out on the street with people staring at you, throwing negative energy at you, treating you as though you have no right to be in their city and the dirty or poor them or whatever, like that builds up after a while. If you don't know how to manage that, it kicks your ass and it pushes you further into like, well, might as well get high because nobody gives a fuck. And if nobody gives a fuck, then what am I even bothering for? What's the point? If there's any type of abuse history, if there's anything like that it's very easy to just throw up your hands and go, fuck it. Who cares? Who cares? Try to remember that as you see people out on the street, you're confronted with the prospect of being homeless yourself. The more you judge others in that way, you're judging yourself. So just try to take judgment out of it completely. Use your discretion, use your instincts for sure. Listen to your instincts, but don't speculate and judge about people that you know nothing about. Let your thoughts be your uplifters, not your captors. It doesn't matter where you are, what environment you're in, what you tell yourself, the story that you tell yourself is really the quality of life that you have. Just remember that. This is a transitional time in your life. This isn't your identity. It's not shameful and awful and bad unless you think it's that way. So be kind to yourself, be kind to your situation. If the pandemic and all of the things that have happened lately has taught us anything, it's that everything is a house of cards. One minute you think you're riding high and doing great and sitting on top of the world, you got money and you got this and you got that, and then the next day you're at square one again. So if you put so much importance on your circumstances, then your circumstances will kick your ass. But you can find a way to make what you have be enough and be okay. I use the term houseless because homeless means that you don't have a home. Home to me is where your heart is. Home is what makes your heart sing, what makes you come alive, what makes you feel grounded and safe on this earth. My home is my children. Art and connecting with people, that's my home. I never was without that. What I didn't have was a house or a residence or whatever, so I was never homeless. I was just houseless. I think it caught on a little bit, at least locally, because I saw someone had like these cool stickers on a signpost, and it said, "Being houseless is not a crime." It's very relevant in this climate, in the world that we live in right now. Just try to have compassion. People with mental illness, I realize it's kind of scary because you don't know if they're gonna like freak out on you or hurt you or whatever. In my experience, anyone with mental illness, they're kind of afraid of you for the most part. If you ignore them, they'll do their thing and they'll leave, even if they start yelling. In my opinion, people with mental illness are prophets, channels, oracles, and that sounds crazy, but there's no reason to feel pity for them or feel afraid of them. They just have a set of skills that not many people do. It's kind of really badass in a way. They have these amazing abilities, but no one knows it. And they just look at them because they're different or because they're not used to, not accustomed to that skill set, and they're like, "Oh, we're crazy." So it's just food for thought, and that's just my personal opinion. Someone is on the street and they have a mental illness, they don't deserve to be treated like a piece of shit. Those are the people that Jesus himself said that we need to rally around. If you believe in that line of thinking, then if they ask you for something, just tell them no if you don't want to help. Just remember, just because you have money to give someone doesn't make you better than them. And just because you have money to go buy drugs or alcohol with yourself doesn't mean it's your job to police someone when you give them money. It's not your job. If you don't want to give them money, that's okay. Don't give them money. But you can't be like, "Oh, I'll give you $5, but I have to be present with you to see what you spend it." Like, come on, man. That would feel like shit if someone did that to you, you know? And my other tip in dealing with anyone that's houseless is houseless and or homeless, just to ask. Don't just walk up to them and give them a sack lunch and be like, "Here you go, I saved the day for you." Just ask them if they even want it. Some people really don't want what you have to give them. And when you run up to them and shove it in their face, it's another brick on the load of they're nothing and they mean nothing and they don't exist. They only exist to make you feel better about yourself when you give them something. Ask if you can. Say, "Hey, can I give this to you?" And if they say yeah, give it to them. Tell them to have a great day. If you want to sit down next to them and get to know them, again, ask if you can do that. Ask if that's okay. Not everybody wants to have that kind of interaction. Treat people on the street with respect. They deserve it. They're people too. And all of the taxpayer dollars that are going to support these pieces of crap, blah, 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 that whole narrative, just think about it, guys. Would there be so many people on the streets if they were really receiving all that money? All in all, I had beautiful moments. There are so many things I will never forget. And it changed who I am. It changed me into the best version of myself to date. At that point, I'm even better now because I've continued the journey of, you get what I'm saying. So like I said, if you're confronted with this, I know it's scary. It is scary, but at the same time, if you make it a fun game, if you make it urban camping, if you make it, this is just a little period of time until something else comes through and I can say, "Hey, I did that. I had that experience in my life." Because at the end of the day, that's what we take with us when we transition out of here. When we shuffle off the mortal coil, our experiences, that's all we have. Let it be a broad spectrum. Everything can always be worse. Everything can always be better. You are the link that is between those two things. I need to print that on a t-shirt. I will post the links. I'll post the NPR story. I took a documentary film class, and so I made a short for my final. I made a short documentary about our time in the car. It's not very long. I think it's like 10 minutes, so I will post that link as well if you want a little more real-time detail, I guess you could say. Thank you for listening to that story. If you have any questions or if you have your own experiences with it, I would love to hear that in the comments. Be kind to each other, guys. Let's just be kind. Let's just move forward. Let's just change the narrative. It's up to us to change it. People in offices are just the people in office. We're the actual country. We're the actual world. let's just look at each other and realize that the human part of all of us is what brings us together. If you feel like you want to help, go help. Otherwise, just zero out. Don't worry about it. Just do it for you. Do it for your heart, for your progression as a human being, hopefully for the benefit of the other person. If you do it for your Insta story or Twitter feed, I can tell you within the homeless community, that is one of the biggest irritations. You are using them to blow smoke up your own ass. You can't show up and be like, hey, I want to help you, and then treat them like some type of trend. They're not a trend. They're a human being. On that note, this was a long one. Thank you for staying to the end if you did. And like I said, let me know. And just a quick side note, I'm not using any type of social media to promote my videos. I want to do it the old school way, just word of mouth and through shares and through virality of its own. Feel free to share and like and subscribe. Hit the notificationer. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you soon. Until then.